The kitchen tiles were cold under my hands when I fell. My legs wouldn't obey me. The plate I was holding shattered with a sharp crack, and the noise rang through our small house like a warning bell. Bryce didn't rush to help. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and his jaw tight. "I can't do this anymore, Hannah," he said flatly, looking past me like I was a stain on the floor. "You can't even cook for me. You can't work. You can't feed me again. I'm done." His voice was the kind that shuts doors. Then he slid a manila envelope onto the counter, the one with the scratch from where the blender fell last month, and he pushed it toward me with one finger. Divorce papers, right there by the sugar jar. My heart trembled in my chest. I opened my mouth to tell him something, anything, but my throat closed. He didn't see the letter tucked under the napkin holder, the one from the law firm, the one I had read 10 times and still didn't fully believe. "Hannah Lane," it said, "per your late uncle's instructions, the trust has matured. Your inheritance totals $100 million. I had kept the secret because secrets can be armor. And as Bryce turned away from me as he walked toward the front door without looking back, I realized I would need armor now more than ever. Hello, friend. Before we go on, tap subscribe to support this channel and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Your city might be the next place our stories visit. Now, let's begin. Before the fall, my life looked simple to people who only saw the surface. I ran a small bakery on Maple Street. The sign outside said "Warm Morning." Folks said our cinnamon rolls felt like a hug. We opened at 5 each day. I liked the dark hour before sunrise when the ovens clicked on and the room filled with the first breath of heat. I wore a blue apron with flour on the pockets, and I knew every regular by name and favorite. Mr. Daniels always wanted the pecan tart with extra glaze. The school kids rushed in for chocolate muffins before the bus. Moms came with strollers and swapped little bits of life while I boxed cookies with a smile. The shop was bright and the bell above the door was cheerful, and even when we were behind on bills, the work felt honest and good. Bryce used to stop by near closing time. He'd lean on the counter, tall and handsome in a way that made people look twice. He didn't wear work clothes anymore. He said the job market was bad and the world was against him, and why break your back for people who don't care? He liked to talk about big plans that never started. He liked to take the day's cash for gas or for something we need. He said we were a team. Teams share, right? So I shared. I paid the rent. I paid the phone. I kept the lights on. I filled the pantry. When he asked for more, I gave it because love gives even when it hurts, and I thought we were just going through a hard season that would end. Then the accident came like a stone through a window. It was a rainy Tuesday. The floor by the back door was slick. I had stacked a box of flour too high on a step stool. I reached up, the stool wobbled, and time went strange. There was a flash of white pain, a crack in my back, and the world tilted. When I woke, there were faces above me and bright hospital lights flooding my eyes. The doctor's voice was gentle. "Hannah," he said, "you've suffered a spinal injury. We're going to help you. It may take time. You may need a wheelchair for now." I nodded like my head belonged to someone else. The room smelled like soap and lemon. Rain tapped the window. I thought about the bakery oven I hadn't turned off. I thought about the dough rising without me. I thought about Bryce and how he would stand at the foot of my bed and say, "Don't worry, I've got us." He didn't. He brought his anger instead. He stood there with his phone in his hand and his lips pressed thin. "So that's it," he muttered, like I had planned the fall just to ruin his day. "You can't do anything now. How am I supposed to eat? How are we supposed to live?" I told him the bakery could survive if we hired help. I told him the neighbors would step in. People are kind when you're honest with them, but Bryce didn't want kind. He wanted easy. He wanted me to bounce up, walk out, and fix everything. When I couldn't, he drifted. He started staying out late. He turned his phone face down on the table. He brushed off my questions with a laugh that sounded like a door locking. Paige came around more then. She had been a friend who turned into a shadow. She wore perfume that filled every room 2 steps ahead of her. She used to take pictures by the bakery window with the sun on her face, posting captions about supporting local dreams while she asked for free cake for the gram. She visited me in the hospital with a bundle of flowers and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Babe, you're so strong," she said, taking a slow video for her story. "We're all rooting for you." She kissed my cheek and snapped another shot. "Smile." That evening, the nurse told me half the bouquet was fake. You couldn't tell unless you touched the leaves and felt the plastic. When I came home, the house had changed. My blue mug was gone, the one with the chip I loved because it reminded me things didn't have to be perfect to be good. The couch smelled like a new cologne I didn't recognize. An extra toothbrush sat by the sink in a rose gold travel case. Bryce called them mistakes and mix-ups, but the truth sits heavy even when people throw words at it. The money got tighter. Bryce asked about deeds and accounts he never cared about before. He pushed me to sell the shop. Be smart, he said. We can't carry dead weight. Dead weight, that's what he called my bakery, that's what he called me. I didn't sell. I hired a teenager named Katie to run the morning shift, and I rolled my chair behind the counter after lunch. People leaned over to hug me carefully and told me the town wasn't the same without me. Kids drew cards. A pastor stopped by and prayed softly by the pastry case. I learned new ways to measure flour, new ways to knead from a chair. My hands remembered what my legs forgot. Some days were slow, some days were strong. On the slow days, I watched the light move across the floor, and I promised myself not to let this room go dark. That's when Noah came back into my life. He was my friend from childhood, the boy who used to fix my bike chain with careful fingers and patience. He moved away after high school, joined the service, and then became a physical therapist. He walked into the bakery one afternoon with the cautious smile of someone who isn't sure if time has made him a stranger. He looked older, steadier, with kind eyes that missed nothing. "Hey, Han," he said, using the old nickname like a hand outstretched. "Heard you could use some help." I laughed and cried all at once. He didn't flinch. He pulled a stool beside me and asked what hurt and what didn't. He rolled up his sleeves and adjusted my chair to fit better under the work table. He showed me how to brace my core before I reached for heavy things. He told me what muscles could still grow strong. "We don't give up on bodies," he said. "We teach them new paths." Bryce didn't like Noah. The first time he saw us laughing over a batch of failed scones, he sneered. "So this is the plan, you two bake and giggle and I starve." Noah studied him like a doctor reading a scan. "There's soup in the fridge," Noah said calmly. "You can heat it." Bryce rolled his eyes and walked out, hitting the door so hard the bell popped off and clattered to the floor. Noah picked it up, fixed the tiny screw, and set it right again. That felt like a picture of everything. 2 weeks later, the law firm letter arrived. The paper was thick, the envelope had a silver crest. My Uncle Walter had been one of those quiet men who wore the same hat for 30 years and loved chess and cherry pie. He had no children. He used to send me $10 bills folded into church bulletins with notes that said, "For books." I loved him, but I didn't know his world. After he passed, I went to the funeral, held my aunt's hand, and came home. I didn't expect anything else. When the letter said he had placed a fortune in a trust for Hannah Lane's future, my head swam. The number had too many zeros. The letter explained it plainly. Investments he made long ago had grown beyond anyone's guess, and everything was now mine. There were instructions for a meeting. There were lines about privacy and caution. At the bottom, the lawyer had written one more sentence in a different pen. "You are stronger than you think." I hid the letter because I needed time to breathe. Money this big is loud. It draws people like porch lights draw moths. I thought of Bryce asking about deeds. I thought of Paige filming my hospital bed. I thought of the way people can turn into open hands when they smell something sweet. I tucked the envelope under the napkin holder and acted like the world hadn't shifted. I told no one but God and the quiet of my room. I wanted to choose who I became before the money told me who to be. That morning, back to the kitchen, back to the fall, back to the envelope and Bryce's voice like ice, I realized I didn't have the luxury of time. He said he was done. He said I no longer fed him like I had been a fridge he could slam shut. He grabbed a duffel bag from the hall closet, the one with the broken zipper I kept meaning to mend, and he slung it over his shoulder. He didn't ask if I needed water. He didn't pick up the broken plate. He opened the door and the smell of wet pavement blew in. "I'll send someone for my stuff," he added, as if I were a storage unit manager. The door clicked behind him. Quiet filled the house like floodwater. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Paige. "Thinking of you, babe," she wrote with a heart and a sparkle. Then a second text came too fast to be kind, a picture of her hand with a new bracelet and a caption that said, "Some people know how to treat a lady." There was a shadow in the glass where her bracelet shone, a man's shoulder, a shirt I had folded 100 times. I closed my eyes. The room spun. I breathed slow so the walls would stop swaying. I called Noah. I didn't want to cry to him. I did anyway. He came in 10 minutes, his truck tires splashing through puddles. He let himself in with the key I had given him just in case, and he knelt beside me and took my hand like he was steadying an engine. "We're going to sit you up," he said. "Then we're going to sweep the floor, then I'm making tea." He moved with quiet focus. The broken pieces went into the trash. The kettle hissed. The house felt less empty with him in it. I told him about Bryce. I told him about the text I wished I hadn't seen. I did not tell him about the letter with all the zeros, not yet. Noah listened. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't say, "He's not worth it." He said, "I'm sorry this hurts and we will get you through it." That word felt like a warm coat. He asked if I wanted to close the bakery for a few days. I shook my head. "If I stop, I think I'll disappear," I whispered. He nodded. "Then we don't stop." He set my cup on the table and rested his hand over mine for a breath. "I can stay tonight," he said. "You don't have to be alone." I started to say yes. Then the doorbell rang. I thought it was Bryce coming back for one more cruel sentence. I braced myself. Noah walked to the door and opened it halfway. A tall man in a dark suit stood on the porch with a leather briefcase and rein on his shoulders. He had a face like a map, lines that told you he had listened to many people and carried their stories carefully. "Ms. Lane?" he asked, peering past Noah with polite eyes. "I'm Mark Ellison from Ellison and Reed. I'm here regarding your uncle's estate." "I apologize for the short notice, but per the trust's instructions, we'd like to finalize a few signatures today. Our firm has already secured the holdings. We can proceed whenever you're ready." Noah turned back toward me, questions rising behind his eyes. I met his gaze. My secret hovered in the room like a held breath. I nodded to the lawyer. "Come in," I said, my voice small but clear. He stepped inside, wiped his feet, and offered a paper towel to dry the briefcase. That tiny act of care made me like him immediately. He set the case on the table and clicked it open. Stacks of documents, tabs in neat colors, pens that looked expensive. He pulled off his wet coat and draped it over a chair. "Again, I'm sorry to arrive like this," he said. "Your uncle planned carefully. He wanted everything quiet and clean." He lowered his voice. "Discretion is important at this stage. Are you comfortable proceeding?" I glanced toward the counter where the divorce envelope still waited. I thought about Paige's text. I thought about the bakery, my bright sign, my people, my life. "Yes," I said softly, "but I need to keep this private for now." Mark nodded. "Of course." Noah remained still like a guard at a gate. Mark placed the first document in front of me. He pointed to the line with my name. "This acknowledges receipt of trust assets," he said. "Once you sign, funds vest in your name. No one else has claim. There is also a clause about marital status, as your uncle insisted on protecting you in case of, well, complications." He didn't look at the divorce envelope. He didn't have to. "This is yours, Ms. Lane," he said gently. "No strings attached." My hand shook as I reached for the pen. The ink tip hovered over the line. My phone buzzed again with a new message, and all three of us looked toward the sound by instinct. A new photo filled the screen. Paige again. The picture was brighter, meaner. She was sitting at a fancy restaurant with Bryce across from her, raising a glass. The caption said, "New beginnings." There was a kissy face and a fire emoji. I felt sick. Noah swore under his breath and then apologized to me for the word. Mark cleared his throat and pretended not to see. I closed my eyes and took a breath. I pictured Uncle Walter's hat. I pictured the way he used to pat my shoulder and say, "Steady, kiddo." I signed the first page, then the second, then the third. Mark slid each one carefully into a folder, his motions smooth and respectful. "There's one more," he said. "This transfers an operating line to your business. Warm morning. Your uncle admired that you built something with your hands. He wanted you to have room to grow." My eyes filled. I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I whispered to the room, to the lawyer, to my uncle, to the God who sees. The front door opened without a knock. Rain and cologne blew in with the same ugly force. Bryce stood there with a hard smile, and behind him came two men in work boots I didn't recognize. Paige slipped in last, her lips glossy, her eyes bright with the thrill of the scene. "Surprise," she sang as if this were a party. Bryce looked around and saw the lawyer, the open briefcase, the stacks of paper, and the pen in my hand. His smile wavered. "What's this?" he asked, trying for casual and landing on sharp. "Who are you?" Mark straightened. "Mark Ellison," he said calmly. "I'm here on a private matter for Ms. Lane." Bryce laughed, the sound hollow. "Private, in my house." He shot a glance at Paige, and she lifted her chin like she was already queen here. "We're just grabbing my stuff," Bryce said. "And a few things from the bakery too. It's our bakery, right? Community property. My cousin's got a truck out front." He jerked his head toward the men. They shifted like dogs waiting for a word. Noah took one step forward, not big, but enough to be a wall. "You're not taking anything today," he said. His voice was level. His hands were loose at his sides. Bryce bristled. "Don't tell me what I can take," he snapped, then tried to soften it with a smirk. "Hannah knows what's fair." His eyes slid to the divorce envelope and back to my face. "Sign those papers, Han," he added like a command. "Let's make this clean." Paige moved closer to the table, her gaze greedy as she scanned the legal documents. "What's all this, babe?" she asked too sweetly. "Looks serious." She reached a manicured finger toward the top page. Mark placed a firm hand over it. "Confidential," he said low and clear. Paige froze, then laughed like she wasn't mad, even though her eyes flashed. "Whatever," she said, tossing her hair. She pointed at me. "We're just here for what belongs to Bryce." I didn't know I was shaking until Noah rested his hand on the back of my chair. The room felt like a storm you can't outrun. My heart hammered. My mouth was dry. I looked at the line I had just signed, bold ink across my name. I looked at the next page, the one that would put a shield around my bakery. I looked at Bryce, who had called me dead weight, and Paige, who had called herself my friend. I looked at the men in boots by my door, waiting to lift my life and walk it out to a truck. Before I could speak, before I could sign or stand or call the police, a sound cut through the house. A car engine outside, then another, then the heavy thud of doors closing in a neat rhythm. Tires on wet pavement, voices low and brisk. Mark's eyes flicked toward the window. "Right on time," he murmured, almost to himself. Paige frowned. Bryce's smirk slipped. Noah's hand pressed steady heat into my shoulder. Black SUV pulled up in front of our house, gleaming even under rain. Another stopped behind it. Men in dark coats stepped out, holding slim cases and folders like the ones on my table. The first man opened an umbrella and nodded toward the porch as if he had been here 100 times. Mark exhaled and gathered the final document, tapping it straight. "Ms. Lane," he said calmly, "the trust officers are here to complete your transfer and deliver the security instructions. Once this page is signed, no one can touch your business or your assets without your say. Shall we finish?" Bryce's mouth opened and closed. Paige's eyes went wide, then sharp. The men in work boots looked at each other, unsure now, like the script had changed. Rain hissed on the driveway. The bell above the door, freshly tightened by Noah, hung still and perfect, like it was waiting to sing again the moment someone stepped into the bakery and said, "Good morning." I lifted the pen. My fingers trembled. I could hear my own breath. I could feel the weight of every moment that had brought me here, the fall, the hospital, the quiet nights, the kindness, the cruel words, the letter with the crest, the courage I thought I didn't have. I lowered the tip of the pen to the line that would lock the door to my life from anyone who wanted to walk in and take it. Bryce took one step forward. Paige reached out as if to snatch the page. Noah shifted, ready. Mark's voice was calm as stone. "Sign when you're ready, Ms. Lane." And then from the porch, a new voice cut through everything, clear and firm, carrying the kind of authority that turns a room. "Ms. Lane, I need to confirm your identity before we proceed, and we also have reason to believe someone here has been moving funds from your business account. We'll need to speak with all parties." The front door swung fully open. A woman in a dark coat held up a badge. Rain glowed on her hair like fire under the porch light. Paige's face drained of color. Bryce's hand slipped off the chair back as if it had burned him. My pen hovered over the line. My name waited. The room held its breath. Rain poured like silver strings across the window as the woman in the dark coat stepped inside. Her badge glinted under the kitchen light, the room frozen in half-breath silence. Paige's fingers twitched near her purse. Bryce straightened, pretending calm, but the red creeping up his neck betrayed him. The lawyer, Mark Ellison, gave the newcomer a respectful nod. "Detective Rowan, I presume," he said softly, as if he had been expecting her. She nodded once, removing her coat in one smooth motion. "We received a report of unusual transfers from the Warm Morning Bakery account," she said, her voice steady, carrying the weight of truth. "Ms. Lane, may we speak privately?" I looked at the people in my kitchen, the man who had called me useless, the woman who had smiled while betraying me, the lawyer who represented my secret, the friend who had protected me, and now this detective, a stranger who somehow felt like justice walking through the rain. "You can speak here," I said quietly. My hand still rested on the document I hadn't signed. The detective's eyes swept over the table, the papers, the faces. "Fine," she said. "Then we'll start here." She turned to Bryce. "Sir, your name?" "Bryce Lane," he said, chin up. "This is my house." The detective's brows lifted slightly. "Actually, the mortgage and deed are under Miss Hannah Lane's name only," she replied, glancing at Mark, who nodded in confirmation. Bryce's mouth opened, then shut again. She looked back at him. "Mr. Lane, we have evidence that over the past 6 months, several withdrawals were made from the Warm Morning Bakery account, funds not authorized by Ms. Lane. We traced them to an external card used primarily at bars, gaming websites, and online luxury stores registered under your name." Bryce's laugh was forced. "That's crazy, she's lying, she gave me permission." "I didn't," I said quietly, cutting through his words like a blade. The detective nodded once. "That's what we needed to confirm." Paige's voice cracked in. "Wait, you can't accuse him like that." Maybe it was a mistake. Bryce wouldn't steal from her. Detective Rowan turned to her sharply. "And you are?" Paige stammered. "Paige Turner, I'm a friend." The detective's gaze sharpened. "Interesting, because one of the withdrawal IPs came from a hotel room booked under a Paige Turner. Care to explain that?" Color drained from Paige's face. She swallowed hard. It must be a coincidence," she whispered. Noah stepped closer to me, not saying a word but standing like a wall that wouldn't move. Mark folded his papers neatly, calm as ever. Detective, before this gets any further, Ms. Lane is prepared to sign the final documents protecting her business and assets. Would you like to witness? The detective nodded. Yes, that would be wise. I picked up the pen again, my fingers trembling but stronger now. Every sound in the room faded except the soft scratch of ink as I signed my name, slow, deliberate, final. The moment the pen lifted, Mark slid the paper into his folder and sealed it. Congratulations, Ms. Lane, he said. Your inheritance is now fully secured under your name. No one here or anywhere else can touch it. Bryce's jaw dropped. Inheritance? What inheritance? Paige blinked fast, trying to smile. She's bluffing, she said quickly. Hannah, what is he talking about? I looked at them both. The inheritance you didn't care to ask about, I said. The one from my uncle, $100 million. The silence was heavier than thunder. Bryce laughed once, sharp and desperate. You're lying. Mark opened his case and handed Detective Rowan a printed statement with the law firm's letterhead. She read it, her eyes scanning quickly, then turned to Bryce. She's not lying, she said. It's real. Bryce's voice cracked. Hannah, come on, I didn't mean those things I said. You know I was stressed, I just... Save it, Noah said, his voice low but firm. You walked out. Bryce turned on him. Stay out of this, soldier boy. Noah didn't move. Gladly, he said, as soon as you stop pretending to love the woman you broke. Paige's tone shifted fast. Look, we all said things we didn't mean, she chirped nervously. Bryce was just upset and you can't hold a grudge forever. Maybe we can talk about this like adults. I mean, think about it, Hannah, people change. I stared at her. You're right, people change. Some grow hearts, some grow greed. The detective closed her notebook. That'll be enough for tonight. Mr. Lane, Ms. Turner, you'll both need to come in for questioning. We'll also seize any shared devices until the fraud report is complete. She turned to me, her tone softening. We'll protect your business and your funds, ma'am. You've been through enough. As she escorted them out, Bryce tried one last look over his shoulder. You'll regret this, he said under his breath. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The door shut and the bell above it rang softly, the first clean sound in days. The room was still. Rain eased into a mist outside. Noah exhaled long, tension leaving his shoulders. Mark handed me a copy of the documents and said, I'll return tomorrow for the confirmation codes. Rest tonight. I thanked him. When he left, the house finally felt like mine again. Noah brewed tea the same way he did the first night I cried. I watched him move, steady and patient, as if nothing could shake him. He handed me a cup and sat across from me. You okay? He asked. I nodded, though tears blurred my sight. I should be, I just feel empty, like I spent years living with strangers. He leaned forward, his voice gentle. You didn't, you loved honestly, that's never wasted. I looked down at my cup. Do you think people like Bryce ever realize what they lost? Maybe, he said, but by then it's too late. We talked until the candles burned low. When Noah finally stood to leave, he paused by the door. Call me if you need anything, he said, day or night. After he left, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm. I wheeled myself to the window and looked at the faint reflection of my face against the glass. My hair was messy, my eyes tired, but there was something new there, a quiet fire. I whispered, I'm still standing. Days passed, the town buzzed with rumors about Bryce and Paige being questioned by the police. Some said they tried to run, others said they turned on each other, each blaming the other for the stolen money. I didn't care which was true. I cared about rebuilding. The bakery reopened with a fresh coat of paint and new energy. Customers flooded back, hugging me, cheering, offering help. Some cried when they saw me behind the counter again. We missed you, Hannah, they said. You're the heart of this street. I hired more workers, teenagers, single mothers, and retirees who needed a purpose. Every morning the ovens hummed and the smell of bread filled the air. Warm morning lived again, brighter than before. I paid for the repairs myself, but quietly, not flaunting the fortune. The money was a blessing, but I wanted to use it to bless others. One evening, while I was closing up, Noah walked in, hair damp from rain. You're supposed to be resting, he said, smiling. I rest better when I work, I replied. He laughed, stubborn as ever. I shrugged, bakers don't stop. He looked around the shop. This place feels alive again, you did it. We did it, I corrected softly. He studied me for a long moment. You know, when I came back, I didn't think I'd find the same girl who used to race me to the creek, but I see her now, stronger. Something inside me stirred, warm and new. And I see the same boy who never let go of my bike until I could ride alone, I said. We smiled, and for a second the world outside disappeared. But peace doesn't stay untested. A week later, a letter arrived. The envelope was plain, no return address, but the handwriting was painfully familiar. Bryce, my chest tightened as I opened it. Hannah, I know you probably hate me, you should. I made mistakes, bad ones. Paige was a distraction, she's gone now. The detective cleared me of most charges, but my accounts are frozen. I'm broke, I need help. I'm not asking for money, just a place to stay until I get back on my feet. You owe me that much for all the years I was there for you. He had signed it with the same messy scrawl I once loved. For a long time I just stared at the words, then I folded the letter and set it aside. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the old memories, our laughter, our wedding, the slow decay that followed. Part of me wanted to forgive, but the other part remembered the cold way he walked out while I lay broken. The next morning, Noah saw the letter on the counter. He reached out, didn't he? He asked quietly. I nodded. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said honestly. He hesitated. Be careful. Guilt makes good people forget what they survived. His words stayed with me all day. By evening, I wrote a reply. Bryce, you're right about one thing. I don't hate you. I pity you. You had love and you traded it for greed. I have peace now and I can't let you take that again. I forgive you, but you can't come back here. I wish you healing, but not at my expense. I sealed the envelope and mailed it without another thought. Few days later, a news headline spread across town. Local woman found guilty of fraud, partner missing. The article showed Paige's picture, makeup smudged, hair messy, eyes wild. She had confessed to forging documents under Bryce's name. Bryce, meanwhile, had disappeared. The police said he drained what little money was left in his joint accounts and vanished. I read the report once, closed the paper, and felt nothing. Not relief, not joy, just quiet closure. That evening, Noah arrived with a box of fairy lights. For what? I asked, puzzled. For tonight, he said, grinning. He hung them around the bakery windows, each light glowing warm and soft. Grand reopening deserves sparkle, he said. Customers trickled in, laughter filled the air, and music played. Kids danced between tables. Someone started clapping. The lights reflected on Noah's face as he looked at me and said, "See, this is what survival looks like." Later, when the night grew calm and only a few of us remained, I rolled outside to breathe the cool air. The street shimmered with puddles reflecting the bakery lights. Noah joined me, hands in his pockets. You ever think about what's next? He asked. I smiled faintly. Every day, maybe I'll open another branch, maybe I'll build a foundation to help accident survivors. That sounds like you, he said softly. What about you? I asked. He looked out at the street, then back at me. I think I'd like to stick around and see what you build. Our eyes met, something unspoken passed between us, not rush, not romance, but promise. Weeks turned into months. Warm morning expanded to 2 new towns. The staff doubled. The bakery became a haven for people who needed second chances. We offered free classes to disabled workers, gave scholarships, and partnered with hospitals to deliver meals. I became busier than ever, but it was the kind of busy that filled instead of drained. One morning, as I opened the mail, I found another envelope, this one official, from the state police. Inside was a short letter. Mr. Bryce Lane was found overseas under a false name. He has been extradited and faces pending charges related to financial fraud and identity theft. You may be contacted for testimony. I read it twice, then set it down. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. I whispered a small prayer, not for punishment, but for release from everything that once bound me to him. That evening, Noah and I stood by the bakery door after closing. The sun melted into gold across the horizon. You okay? He asked. I am, I said simply. He nodded. You know, your uncle was right. I frowned. About what? He smiled. You are stronger than you think. I laughed softly, feeling tears prick my eyes. I finally believed that. He reached into his pocket and handed me a small keychain, a tiny silver bell. "For the new bakery door," he said. "Every time it rings, remember how far you've come." I took it, touched the cool metal, and smiled. "Thank you," I whispered. That night, as I hung the bell on the new door, the sound it made was clear and bright. Each chime echoed like a heartbeat, a reminder that even broken things can sing again. But somewhere far away in a cold cell, Bryce held a torn picture of us, one from the early days, and whispered my name, realizing too late what he had thrown away. He had walked out on love thinking he lost a burden. What he lost was grace. And as for me, I didn't just find freedom, I found purpose. My scars weren't chains, they were proof that I had lived, fallen, and risen again. When the night wind brushed through the bakery window, carrying the smell of sugar and hope, I looked up and whispered, "Uncle Walter, I did it." And from somewhere deep inside, I felt peace answer back. Morning sunlight filtered through the bakery window like liquid gold, spilling across trays of freshly baked rolls and glazed pies. The bell above the door chimed softly, and every sound carried warmth. I breathed in the scent of cinnamon, sugar, and new beginnings. It had been nearly a year since Bryce was arrested and Paige was sentenced. The noise of their chaos had faded, replaced by laughter, music, and the rhythm of dough being kneaded on wooden counters. My bakery, once a dream that nearly died, was alive again, more than I ever dared to hope. Yet deep inside, I still felt something unfinished, like a page left unturned. The headlines had called me the woman who rose from ashes. People wanted to interview me, write articles, take photos. I declined every time. I didn't rebuild for attention, I rebuilt for peace. Some days I'd sit by the window after closing, watch the last customer leave, and whisper, "I made it." But at night, when the lights dimmed and the world went quiet, I sometimes heard the echo of Bryce's last words, "You'll regret this." The police said he was serving time, but rumors drifted in, rumors that his lawyer was pushing for early release, that he was trying to claim he had been manipulated by Paige. I told myself it didn't matter. I had moved on. I was stronger. But strength doesn't stop the heart from remembering pain. Noah had become part of my daily life. He helped manage the new branch in Oak Ridge and insisted on checking the bakery ramps himself every week, making sure they were smooth and safe for my wheelchair. He'd show up early, sleeves rolled, ready to mix dough or fix anything that squeaked. Everyone in town loved him. Sometimes customers whispered that we made a good pair. I'd blush, pretending not to hear, but inside, something softened each time his hand brushed mine over the counter. One Saturday, he walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee and a brown envelope. "Got mail for you," he said, "from the law firm." My heart tightened. Every letter from the firm felt heavy, like news from a ghost. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single page with elegant handwriting. "Dear Ms. Lane, your uncle's final directive includes one more gift, a property on Willow Creek Farm, currently unoccupied. He wished it to be yours to use however you see fit. Please contact us to finalize transfer of ownership." I read it twice. Willow Creek Farm. My uncle had loved that place. It was where he used to take me when I was a child, where I learned to climb fences and feed horses, where he told me that peace was something you grow, not something you buy. My chest warmed with memories. Noah leaned on the counter. "What's it say?" "It's a farm," I said quietly. "He left me his farm." Noah grinned. "A farm? That's huge. You're going to see it, right?" I hesitated. "I haven't been there in years." "Then it's time," he said simply. "Let's go this weekend." That weekend came faster than I expected. We drove down long winding roads past open fields and sleepy hills. The air smelled of pine and rain. When we reached the old gate, my breath caught. The sign still said Willow Creek in faded letters. Ivy crept along the wooden posts and wildflowers danced beside the fence. It looked untouched by time. Noah helped me down carefully, his hand steady. I rolled my chair toward the porch, the sound of gravel crunching under wheels. The house stood tall, paint peeling, but proud, like an old soldier who had seen everything and still stood. As I reached the front step, the wind whispered through the trees like voices welcoming me home. Inside, dust motes floated in sunlight beams cutting through the broken blinds. The air smelled like old wood and faint lavender. My fingers brushed along the table by the window, my uncle's chessboard still there, pieces frozen mid-game. On the mantel, a photograph of me at 12 smiled back, tears welled in my eyes. "He kept this," I whispered. Noah put a hand on my shoulder. "He never stopped believing in you." We spent the day walking the property, talking about what it could become. "You could turn it into a retreat," Noah said, "a place for recovery for people who went through what you did." I nodded slowly. "A place for healing," I murmured. "I like that." By sunset, we sat on the porch watching light spill across the fields. Crickets began their evening song. Noah turned to me. "You've built so much, Hannah, but are you happy?" His question caught me off guard. I stared at the horizon. "I think I am," I said softly. "But sometimes I wonder what happiness really means. Maybe it's not laughter or success. Maybe it's just waking up and not hurting anymore." He smiled faintly. "Then you're already there." Something passed between us then, something tender and real. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. He reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My heart raced, but it wasn't fear, it was the first flicker of joy in a long, long time. The next few months were filled with plans. We restored the farmhouse, hired local workers, and planted a new garden behind the barn. Every weekend, families came by to help, laughing and singing as they worked. Children chased chickens, volunteers painted fences, and Noah built ramps for accessibility. The farm began to glow again, alive with purpose. We named it the Willow Home Project, a sanctuary for accident survivors, trauma victims, and anyone rebuilding their life. It was my dream taking root. But dreams are fragile when shadows from the past still linger. One night, as rain beat softly against the farmhouse roof, I received a call from Detective Rowan. Her tone was careful. "Ms. Lane, I wanted to inform you before the news does. Bryce Lane has been released early. Good behavior. He's on probation." My stomach tightened. "Released?" I whispered. "Yes," she said. "He's been ordered to stay out of state, but I thought you should know. We don't believe he poses a threat, but it's best to stay cautious." After the call ended, I sat staring at the dark window. Thunder rolled in the distance. Memories I had buried began to stir, the shouting, the betrayal, the sound of the door closing behind him. My hands trembled slightly, but I refused to let fear win. I whispered, "He can't hurt me anymore." Still, the next few days I found myself glancing at doors, double-checking locks, listening too hard to footsteps. Noah noticed. "You're on edge," he said one morning as we unpacked supplies. "I'm fine," I lied. He set down the box and looked at me. "He's out, isn't he?" I froze. "How did you?" "Detective Rowan called me too," he admitted. "She thought I should keep an eye on you." I wanted to be angry, but instead relief washed over me. "Thank you," I whispered. Days passed peacefully until one afternoon, as the bakery was closing, a shadow appeared outside the glass door. I was counting cash drawers when I looked up and froze. Bryce. He looked thinner, older. His hair was unkempt, eyes sunken but still burning with that familiar arrogance. For a second I thought I was seeing a ghost, then he smiled, slow and wrong. I locked the door immediately. He knocked once, twice. "Hannah," he called, voice muffled through the glass. "I just want to talk." I wheeled back, heart pounding. Noah wasn't there. He had gone to deliver bread to a shelter. I grabbed my phone and texted him quickly. "He's here." Bryce's hand pressed against the glass. "Come on, babe, I'm not here to fight, I've changed." I swallowed hard. "Leave Bryce, please." He laughed bitterly. "So that's it, you get rich, build your little empire, and pretend I never existed." "I didn't have to pretend," I said quietly. His smile vanished. "You think you're better than me now," he hissed. "You were nothing without me." The words hit like old knives, but I stayed still. "I was already nothing because of you," I replied. He slammed his fist against the glass. The sound made me flinch. "Open the door, Hannah." Headlights flashed outside, the sound of a truck pulling in. Noah jumped out before the engine even stopped, rushing toward the bakery. "Step away from the door," he shouted. Bryce turned, sneering. "Ah, the hero again." Noah moved fast, positioning himself between me and Bryce. You heard her, he said, leave. Bryce's voice dropped low. You took everything from me, you and your crippled charity act, but this isn't over. Before Noah could answer, Bryce stormed off into the night, tires screeching as his car sped away. My chest ached from the rush of fear. Noah knelt beside me, gripping my hand. Are you okay? I nodded shakily. I'm okay. He exhaled. We'll make sure he never comes near you again. We filed a report the next morning. Detective Rowan assured us she'd handle it, but Bryce didn't show up again, not for days, not for weeks. Life began to settle once more. The farm continued growing, the bakery thrived, and laughter returned. Yet sometimes when the wind rustled too hard or an unfamiliar car slowed near the bakery, I'd feel that old chill crawl up my spine. Then came the fundraiser night at Willow Home, a celebration of everything we'd achieved. The hall was filled with flowers, banners, and music. Guests came dressed in their best, clapping and cheering as we announced new programs for survivors. I rolled onto the small stage, microphone trembling in my hand, and said, "A year ago I thought my story was over. Today I know it was only beginning. Healing isn't easy, it's a choice we make every day. And to everyone who's ever been broken, I promise you, your scars are proof that you lived, not that you lost." The room erupted in applause. Noah stood at the back, smiling proudly. But in the corner, just for a moment, I saw a face I'd never forget, Bryce, standing by the exit, watching. My voice caught, but I didn't stop speaking. I kept smiling, my heart beat loud in my ears. Then, as the applause faded and I looked again, he was gone. That night, Noah drove me home. You saw him, didn't you? He asked softly. I nodded. I think so, or maybe my mind's playing tricks. He reached for my hand. Either way, you're not alone, not ever again. The next morning, a package arrived at the bakery. No name, no address, just my name scrawled in messy handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single note: "You'll never be free of me." Underneath it, a photo, an old one of Bryce and me, ripped in half. My stomach turned. I handed it to Noah when he arrived. His jaw clenched. He's pushing boundaries again, he said. I'll call Rowan. Detective Rowan came within the hour, calm and professional. He's violating probation, she said firmly. We'll handle it. That evening, she called back. We found him. He's being taken in for questioning again. You can rest, Ms. Lane. Rest. It was such a small word, but it meant everything. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe deeply. I sat by the window, watching the bakery lights reflect on the wet pavement, and whispered, "It's really over this time." The following weeks brought quiet peace. The foundation grew, donations poured in, and people kept visiting the farm for healing retreats. I started writing again, stories about kindness, about courage, about rising from pain. Every word felt like stitching a wound closed. Then one evening, Noah surprised me with dinner at the farm. Candles lined the porch. The sky was painted with soft pinks and golds. "What's all this?" I asked, smiling. He rubbed the back of his neck, nervous. "You've spent your whole life giving hope to others, Hannah. I just wanted you to have a night where you feel celebrated." As we ate, laughter filled the air. The wind carried the scent of lavender from the field. He looked at me, eyes soft. "You know," he said slowly, "I used to think miracles were only for stories, but then I met you again." I smiled shyly. "That sounds like something out of a book." "Maybe," he said, "but it's true." He stood, walked around the table, and knelt beside me. My heart stopped. "Hannah Lane," he said, voice trembling but sure, "you taught me that strength doesn't roar, it whispers. You showed me that love can grow even from broken soil. I don't want to just help you rebuild your world, I want to build the rest of it with you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, simple and beautiful. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes. For a moment I couldn't speak. My hands shook as I covered my mouth. The past flashed through my mind, the pain, the betrayal, the darkness, and then the light of everything I had gained. Slowly I nodded. "Yes," I whispered, voice breaking. "Yes, Noah." He smiled through his own tears and slipped the ring onto my finger. The night air filled with the sound of crickets and joy. Fireflies danced across the field like tiny sparks of blessing. And as I leaned into his embrace, I realized the truth. Life had not taken everything from me, it had cleared space for something better. Somewhere far away, Bryce might still curse my name, but here, surrounded by peace, love, and purpose, his shadow meant nothing. Because what he left broken, I rebuilt into something stronger than he could ever understand. I had lost everything once, now I had everything that mattered. And as the stars shimmered above Willow Creek, I whispered, "Thank you, Uncle Walter, you gave me more than money, you gave me a second chance." The wind rustled through the trees like a quiet amen. The night breeze carried the faint scent of vanilla and sugar from the bakery down the quiet street. Inside, soft music played from a small speaker as Hannah arranged flowers in a crystal vase by the window. She looked peaceful, her hair now longer, her smile more certain. The gold band on her finger glimmered under the warm lights. It had been 3 months since Noah proposed, and each day since felt like a gift she had once thought life would never give again. The world had settled, her heart had healed, and for the first time in years there was no storm in sight, or so she believed. Outside, beyond the gentle hum of streetlights, a shadow lingered. A car idled at the corner. Inside it sat Bryce, his face half hidden by the darkness. His jaw was clenched, his fingers tapping the steering wheel. He had been released again, this time on parole under strict supervision. But freedom had only sharpened the bitterness in him. The world had moved on, and Hannah had become something he never expected, a symbol of hope. People admired her, loved her, called her a miracle. And to Bryce, that was unbearable. He had spent nights scrolling through news about her bakery expansion, watching clips of her speeches online, each word cutting deeper. She had everything: money, fame, love. He had nothing but regret and anger that ate through him like rust. So that night he came back to the town he was told never to return to. He told himself he only wanted to see her just once, but the truth hid in his pocket, a small silver lighter and a bottle of gasoline tucked in the car trunk. Inside the bakery, Hannah was setting the alarm when her phone buzzed. It was Noah. Running late, the message read, "Got caught up with the Willow home team. Be there soon, love you." She smiled, her heart softening. She texted back, "Don't rush, I'll lock up and wait for you." She wheeled toward the front door, turned the sign to closed, and sighed contentedly. The world outside was silent, only the sound of rain beginning to fall. As she moved toward the back room, a faint creak echoed. She froze. "Hello," she called gently. No answer. She shook her head, thinking maybe the wind had nudged the old window latch again. But then she caught a shadow move across the front glass, a shape she knew too well, her chest tight. "No," she whispered, fear crawling back from a place she had buried long ago. The front door handle rattled once, twice, then a knock, slow and deliberate. "Hannah," the voice came, deep, rough, familiar. "It's me." Her hands gripped the wheels of her chair tightly. "Leave, Bryce," she said, voice steady but trembling at the edges. "You're not supposed to be here." "I just want to talk," he said. "5 minutes, please." "I have nothing to say to you." "But I do." The rain intensified, tapping against the windows. Through the glass she could see him, hair slicked from rain, face hardened by sleepless nights. "You've changed everything," he said through the door. "You think you're a saint now, that you're better than me." "This isn't about being better," she said softly. "It's about surviving what you did." He slammed his fist against the door, the sound thunderous. "I gave you everything. I stayed when no one else would." "You stayed until it was inconvenient," she shot back. "Then you left when I needed you most." For a moment, the only sound was rain and her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Then, suddenly, the doorknob turned. The lock held, but she realized with horror that she hadn't latched the back entrance after taking out the trash earlier. A cold rush of air swept through as the back door creaked open. She spun her chair, panic rising. "Bryce, don't do this." His silhouette filled the doorway, eyes burning with a twisted mix of guilt and fury. "You took my life," he hissed. "You made me nothing." "I didn't make you nothing," she said firmly. "You chose it." He stepped forward. "You don't deserve any of this. That money, that man, that fame, it should have been ours." "Get out," she said, voice sharp now, "before you destroy what little is left of your soul." He laughed bitterly. "Soul, you think you're the only one who can rebuild. You think you're untouchable because you sit in that chair and people pity you." Her eyes flared. "Don't you dare," she said. "Don't you dare call my survival pity." Bryce's breathing quickened. "I lost everything, Hannah, everything, and you get applause for it." She saw something flicker in his eyes, something wild, desperate, then the faint metallic click. Her gaze dropped, the lighter. No, she whispered. I'm not going to hurt you, he said, voice cracking. I just want you to know how it feels to lose what you love. He pulled the bottle from his coat pocket, twisted the cap, and the acrid smell of gasoline filled the air. Bryce, please, she said, tears welling. Don't do this, you can still change, it's not too late. He hesitated, lighter trembling in his hand. Rain pounded harder, lightning flashed, illuminating his face, a face torn between rage and ruin. Too late, he repeated softly. You were my last chance. Before he could act, a crash sounded from behind. The door flew open and Noah rushed in, soaked from the storm. Drop it, he shouted. Bryce spun, startled, and in that split second, Noah lunged forward. The lighter clattered to the ground, rolling near a puddle of gasoline. Bryce shoved him back, shouting, "Stay out of this!" The two men struggled, slipping on the wet floor. Hannah's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop, both of you." But Bryce wasn't listening. He swung wildly. Noah blocked the blow and pushed him against the counter. The lighter skidded closer to the oven's open pilot flame. Hannah's eyes widened in horror. "Noah!" she screamed. Noah turned just as the flame caught the edge of the gasoline trail. Fire roared to life, crawling fast across the floor. Heat exploded through the room. Bryce froze, eyes wide with panic. "Get out!" Noah shouted, grabbing Hannah's chair and wheeling her toward the door. Flames climbed up the curtains, devouring them in seconds. The smoke thickened, choking the air. Bryce stumbled behind, coughing. "Help me!" he cried. Noah hesitated for a heartbeat, just one, but it was enough. He ran back through the smoke, found Bryce trapped behind a fallen beam, and pulled him free. Together they stumbled out into the storm, collapsing on the wet pavement. Hannah watched, trembling, as the fire consumed the bakery that had once been her heart. Firefighters arrived minutes later, their sirens slicing through the night. Water hissed against flames. Neighbors gathered in pajamas, whispering, watching the smoke rise. Hours later, when the last ember died, Hannah sat in an ambulance blanket, staring at the charred remains. Tears streaked her soot-stained cheeks. Noah sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Bryce was handcuffed nearby, silent, staring at the ground. Detective Rowan arrived, raincoat dripping, face grim. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Hannah nodded weakly. "We're alive, that's enough." Rowan looked toward Bryce. "He'll face new charges," she said. "But you," she paused. "You saved him, Noah, and you, Ms. Lane, you saved yourself." As the sun rose over the ruins, a soft orange glow painted the sky. Hannah watched it silently, feeling the warmth on her face. "I'll rebuild again," she said quietly, "even if I have to start from ashes." Noah turned to her. "You don't have to do it alone." She looked at him, tears turning to a smile. "I know." Months later, the new bakery stood on the same street, stronger, brighter, named Morning After. The grand reopening drew crowds from all over. Cameras flashed, music played, and Hannah stood at the entrance, holding Noah's hand. She cut the ribbon as the crowd cheered. Inside, photos of the old bakery hung on the wall, a reminder of where she had come from. But above them all, framed in gold, was a single quote from her uncle. "What you lose to fire, you gain in light." Reporters asked her to speak, and she smiled into the microphone. "This isn't a story about money," she said. "It's a story about mercy. Life will break you, but it can also rebuild you if you let it. I lost everything once, my body, my marriage, my faith. But in losing it, I found who I really am. And if anyone here feels like their life has burned down, I promise you, ashes are just the beginning of something new." The room fell silent, then erupted into applause. Noah squeezed her hand. "You did it," he whispered. She turned to him, her eyes shining. "No," she said softly, "we did." In the months that followed, Morning After became a symbol of hope. Survivors came to work there. Families gathered to celebrate healing, and children laughed again in the warmth of fresh bread. The bakery supported the Willow Home project fully, turning Hannah's pain into power for others. She and Noah married quietly at the farm under a sky filled with lanterns. Friends from every chapter of her life came, neighbors, workers, even Detective Rowan, smiling as she handed Hannah a bouquet of sunflowers. As vows were spoken, the air felt thick with grace. When Noah said, "For better or worse, in ashes or bloom," Hannah laughed through her tears. "Always," she whispered back. That night, as they danced under fairy lights, a soft wind blew through the fields, and for the first time, Hannah felt completely free. But somewhere far away in a small prison cell, Bryce sat staring at a newspaper article showing their wedding photo. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He dropped the paper, buried his head in his hands, and whispered, "She really moved on." For the first time in his life, regret felt heavier than anger. Back in Willow Creek, Hannah stood by the farmhouse porch, looking at the stars. "Uncle Walter," she said softly, "your little girl finally found her light." The night answered with silence and peace. And as the camera panned over the glowing bakery windows, her voice echoed in the hearts of everyone watching her story online. No matter how hard life knocks you down, never forget what's broken can still be beautiful. Your pain can become someone else's hope. So don't stop believing, don't stop rebuilding, because your story isn't over yet, it's just beginning. She smiled at the lens, that calm, knowing smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out shining. "Thank you for watching," she said gently. "Don't forget to subscribe to support our growth, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. Your shoutout might be in our next story." The screen faded to black, and in white letters appeared. The end of one chapter, the beginning of another. Subscribe for more emotional stories that heal hearts and remind us, love always wins.